That damage reaches right into the rural fastnesses of Powell tonight, puts Labour comfortably. 5 years in jail for necessary after the fact to assault. Polls preempt by-election results. In the case of Monmouth, which votes in 2 days, Labour certainly hopes so. An ICM poll in tomorrow's Daily Mail gives Labour a 10% lead over the Conservatives who are defending the seat. The poll puts Labour support at 43%, the Conservatives on 33%, the Liberal Democrats on 22%. ICM polled 571 people in the constituency last Sunday and Monday, and that puts the margin of error at plus or minus 5%. Labour were also ahead in another poll in this morning's Independent. Pollsters, of course, insist that they simply take a snapshot of constituency opinion at a given moment, and that voters retain complete freedom to change their minds before casting their ballots. Well, Anthony Howard has been following the three-party battle in Monmouth and pondering on the element of predestination introduced by the polls.
By-elections belong to the unplanned agenda of politics. They come about largely through the accident of death, and if anyone decides why and when they take place, it tends to be the Grim Reaper. If the matter originally had been left to them, neither the Conservatives, nor the Labour Party, nor even the ever-hopeful Liberal Democrats would automatically have chosen Monmouth as the battlefield for what may turn out to be the last by-election of this Parliament. Of course, the final 2 days of the campaign have been dominated by the appearance of two opinion polls, each placing Labour comfortably ahead of the Conservatives, with the Liberal Democrats forlornly trailing in third place. For Labour, with one poll only already in the public domain, the task this morning was to keep overconfidence at bay.
We're not going to get complacent about this poll. It's encouraging. There's another 2 days to go, and we will work very hard to secure the maximum vote in this constituency for Labour.
For the Tories, the challenge was somehow to rebuild morale.
He's a tip-top politician. He'll be a terrific member of Parliament, and when he is in the House of Commons, he's the sort of person who will have people coming into the chamber, not least, if I may say so, the sketch writers, rather than leaving it.
While the Liberal Democrats have the toughest job of all in seeking to escape the squeeze which now threatens to come at them from both directions.
You will know that by-elections are won and lost in the movement that occurs in the last 2 or 3 days. That movement is now with us and not against us.
It says something about the power of the modern science of political temperature-taking that even in historic territory like this, the pollsters should so effortlessly have been able to wrest control over the contest from the politicians. But then Monmouth is a place where things are never quite what they seem. It's gentle, rolling country, even on the Welsh side of the River Wye, but the constituency of Monmouth still offers treacherous terrain to all three of the major parties. If Welsh by Act of Parliament, it's Anglo-Saxon by temperament, and the politics they practice here tend to be those of politeness and not of passion. Down the centuries, this border country has seen altogether too many clashes of armies and cultures to allow itself to be carried away by a mere by-election. But uncomfortably for the rival party organisers, there's an old saying about still waters running deep, and if you look closely, the placid surface here conceals a strong current. Roger Evans, the Conservative candidate, now faces the unenviable prospect of being the 5th government candidate in a row to lose a safe Tory seat. For him, the by-election has proved a mixed blessing. Instead of slipping unobserved into Parliament, he's become the focus of attention for a fascinated and sometimes incredulous media.
Isn't the sort of problem emerging from this campaign is that you're too good at saying what you think as opposed to what perhaps politicians ought to say?
Well, if you're telling me I ought to be more slippery and ought to be more dishonest, I reject that. And at the end of the day, I believe the electorate of this constituency will reject that. I see neither merit, justice or truth in trying to fudge matters, and I've made that very clear from the beginning of this campaign.
Mr. Evans, in fact, is a period piece, still speaking the language of the Daily Express of the 1950s, and evidently believing every flesh-creeping word of it. Dressed invariably in tweeds, he's certainly cheered up the campaign, but his orotund phraseology and adversarial attitudes may not have commended him to the ordinary voter.
Hello, Roger Evans, the Conservative candidate for the by-election. Very pleased to meet you.
Have you got any chance, sir? Oh.
At least, however, no one can deny that he is his own man. The charge against Huw Edwards, the Polytechnic lecturer Labour candidate, is that is exactly what he is not. He's fighting his very first election, and his political virginity, not to say personal insecurity, can sometimes surface at his morning press conferences.
All I can say to that is what I said a couple of days ago. The Labour Party is undertaking a review of electoral reform at the moment, and I will support the outcome of that review.
No, but it would be to say.
No, it's not.
Whatever it may be is what it is.
It's not wimpish at all. It shows that I'm a good moderate member of the Labour Party.
If his opponent's problem lies in being altogether too articulate, Edwards sometimes gives the impression of being too frightened to say anything, and under the watchful eye of his Svengali, runs the risk of seeming an identikit candidate without an identity. The authentic homespun element in the campaign is provided by Frances Daly, the Liberal Democrat candidate. A local deputy head teacher, she's strongest on parish pump issues and carries something of the cadences of the classroom into her daily meetings with the media.
Now, in my time this morning, I want to concentrate briefly, but very forcefully, I hope, on the transport problems of this area. I mean, for just how much longer are we going to have...
58 and the mother of 6 children, she ought to provide the voice of experience in the contest. But somehow, an air of authority is lacking, at least on national issues.
45, then I sell them at 45. Ivor Jones, 45.
40 years ago, the farm vote would probably have provided the key to this constituency. But now, the number of voters directly employed in agriculture is barely 3,000. The farmers, however, continue to underpin the economy, not least in market towns like Abergavenny, where a livestock market is held twice a week. If interest rates remain high, prices continue to be low, and the farming community welcomes the by-election as offering the chance to make their grievances felt.
A lot of traditional Tory voters will very possibly will either not vote at all or possibly will switch their vote. Being a traditional Tory voter myself and sort of family before me, like I say, I looked very, very hard and I could be looking at something else.
There were more sheep in the, more politicians in the market last week than there were sheep. And it's rather gratifying that just for once people are taking notice of farmers. And I think there's a very widespread opinion abroad in this market at the moment that since it's a by-election, it's an opportunity to tell the Tories just how badly and how desperate a lot of farmers are feeling about the situation.
I was intending on voting Conservative, but I feel now that I'm either going to give an abstention vote or vote for Liberals or someone, but certainly not the Conservatives.
Among farmers, there's unquestionably a vein of discontent with the government that the Liberal Democrats originally hoped to be able to turn to their advantage. But it remained, defiantly, an issue limited by the local landscape. Labour has been shrewder in choosing to run with a national issue, and one that has proved to have wonderful mileage in it. From the first appearance with its shadow health spokesman, Robin Cook, early on in the campaign, the Labour strategy has been to concentrate virtually all its fire on the National Health Service, and in particular, the government's proposals for trust status for NHS hospitals.
So today I've come to Chepstow to launch Labour's campaign in Wales to keep our hospitals in the local NHS.
To support this campaign, I am today launching my own case against the opt-out of Neville Hall and the Royal Gwent hospitals. It is called Don't Trust the Trusts.
The Conservative candidate's response was immediate and vigorous, if not perhaps wholly prudent.
What they describe as trust status is, in their view, as presented to the electorate, something amounted to privatisation. You'll pay a fee when you walk into Neville Hall. This is a complete nonsense. It is a fairy tale of wickedness designed to scare socialist children.
For it soon became clear the largest general acute hospital in the constituency was already considering just such a move. The administration at the Neville Hall Hospital in Abergavenny betrays every sign of preparing for a future in the commercial world. The hospital has 430 beds and almost 1,500 staff, by no means all of whom are reconciled even to contemplating a change in its status.
Consulted met 2 evenings ago and were agreed unanimously
that we did not wish to consider trust status at the present time. I think for many of us, the idea of trust status represents an attack on fundamental principles of the NHS, to which many of us are very deeply committed.
We're a very long way from actually making a decision. We need to find out, and we need to really talk through the issues and to really work out for ourselves what are the advantages and disadvantages of NHS trust status for this particular unit.
Do you think the question of the future of this hospital has been an issue in the Monmouth by-election?
Yes, I do. I think it has been a major issue, and I think it will be to the detriment, and quite rightly so, of the Conservative candidate, particularly in view of one or two of the inept remarks he's made, and I suspect probably of greatest advantage to the Labour candidate.
It is a problem, I think, that nationally people are going to have to face, that they're going to have to decide whether or not the NHS is safe in Tory hands, and it will be an issue, I'm sure, in the next general election.
Not surprisingly, the Neville Hall Hospital was Neil Kinnock's chosen first port of call on his visit to the constituency just 6 days before polling. Even with the health service successfully dominating the debate in the campaign, his hopes of a Labour by-election victory were kept well under control.
This is a pretty rock-hard Tory constituency, to the extent that there is, I think, an almost irreducible upper 30% of Tory votes here. It's that kind of constituency. Now, that was never the case in Mid-Staffs. This was always going to be a tougher hill to climb.
He's still out of your
Neil Kinnock's worry must now be a different one, that after the opinion poll, even some of Labour's own supporters will take victory for granted and fail to turn out to vote. For his part, Paddy Ashdown may well live to repent his own early overconfidence, if only because it threatens to put in peril his recent flawless record as a by-election forecaster.
I will tell you one thing that I am now certain of. I wasn't last week, but I'm now certain of, and that is that we can win this seat. It's open, and it's very much the kind of seat which I experienced in Ribble Valley, and very much the kind of mood that we had in Ribble Valley in the week before polling day. So I can tell you this seat can be won by the Liberal Democrats. I want this seat to be won by the Liberal Democrats, and as of today, we are throwing everything at winning this seat for the Liberal Democrats.
The one thing Monmouth cannot complain about is the amount of attention it has attracted. The Tories in particular went for the celebrity stakes, wheeling out Norman Tebbit, who in happier days ran the 1987 election campaign from central office, and Cecil Parkinson, who did the same even more triumphantly in 1983. He at least, though, was making no predictions on this occasion.
I would like to put a bet on it.
No.
You wouldn't? No. Would you?
I think I'm not a betting man.
It was left for Michael Heseltine to collect the largest audience of the campaign at an evening meeting in a Monmouth comprehensive school. Again, however, with polling day almost a week away, his own estimate of the likely impact of the by-election on the Prime Minister's electoral thinking was notably cautious.
I think he's obviously very concerned, to be sure, that the now evident improvements in the economy are clearly understood. We're going to have significant reduction in inflation, but perhaps it hasn't gone on long enough. Interest rates are beginning to come down, but perhaps they haven't come down far enough or for sufficient a period of time. And that's a judgment that the Prime Minister has got to make. He may be tempted to wait a little longer in order to reinforce the success.
For the most part, by-election life for the candidates is a mundane, even humdrum affair. The stars may descend for an hour or two, but it is the candidates who have to bear the burden of the heat of the day. No sooner is the daily ordeal with the media over than they are forced to take to the road to press the flesh and meet the people. Occasionally, there's a welcome variation in the routine, like this midday gathering for sixth formers at a school in Abergavenny. The joint Green Plaid Cymru candidate, Mel Witherden, had been invited to take part, along with the three main party standard-bearers. It was two of them, however, who in the end brought the debate to life, with the Conservative candidate, Roger Evans, clearly leaving a legend behind in the minds of his youthful audience.
Now, what I ask the Socialist candidate is this. If he really believes that these do not promote the classless society, would he please come clean and tell us whether a socialist government wants to banish both private healthcare and private education? Are they in the totalitarian tendency still or not?
It's not in our manifesto, to abolish private education or private health care. It is in our manifesto to invest in public education, the National Health Service. The idea that these are some sort of totalitarian ideas that come from Vladivostok is I don't know anybody in Vladivostok. I only have to go up to the Mahdi and find out what people think about the need for a national health service and state education.
Nice guys, they always say, finish last. But if the opinion polls are even roughly right, this contest could well prove an exception to the rule. If Labour has demonstrated one thing here, it's the response you get by hammering away at a single issue and never letting it go. It looks like being a lesson it will carry into the next general election, even if it may now have to wait for that long after next month, and possibly beyond the autumn too.